Hello, my name is Julie Smith, and I'm the Executive Director of the Identity Defined Security Alliance, and I want to thank you for joining today. Our webinar, presented by IDSA members Ping Identity and LikeMinds Consulting, Adopting Zero Trust in a Post-Pandemic World. In this panel discussion, you'll get a 360 perspective on Zero Trust, on challenges and lessons learned, from the customer, vendor, and system integrator perspective. Before we start, I want to point out a few logistics. We are recording today's discussion, so please make sure to share the link with your colleagues. In the BrightTalk portal in front of you, you will see a place to submit questions. If you have any as the discussion unfolds, please submit them. And lastly, you'll see a tab for attachments, where you'll find links to resources discussed today from LikeMinds, Ping Identity, and the IDSA, as well as links to the respective websites. So before I turn it over to our presenters today, a quick commercial for the Identity Defined Security Alliance. The IDSA is a nonprofit organization that facilitates community collaboration to help organizations reduce risk by providing education, best practices, and resources to implement identity defined security. Our membership is comprised of leading identity and security vendors, in addition to our customer advisory board members who provide guidance on our mission and represent the practitioner community. All of our resources are freely available on our website, idsalliance.org, and I encourage you to visit the website and check us out. So let's get started. I'd like to introduce to you our panelists for today's discussion. Hi guys, welcome.
Hi.
So let's go round the horn here. Sriram, we'll start with you if you do a quick introduction.
Thank you, Julie. My name is Sriram Santhanam. I'm a director of IT at Gap Inc., leading their identity and access management organization. My personal interests include obviously zero trust as well as cloud security. Thank you.
Great. Aubrey Turner, would you introduce yourself today, please? Aubrey, you're on mute.
How about now? Is that better?
Awesome.
Great start, Turner. Great start. Pull it together. Thanks, Julie, and hello to my fellow panelists. Aubrey Turner, Executive Advisor at Ping Identity. Been in the identity and cybersecurity space for about 20 years, and don't claim to know it all, but I've seen quite a bit, and look forward to today's discussion.
Thanks, Aubrey. Thani, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Julie. My name is Thani Anandan, and hello to everyone. Yeah. I am the Director of Identity Management and Security at LikeMinds Consulting, and I am been in identity access management and security for the past 20 years, and more on the consulting side. And here I am to talk from a system integrator perspective. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for being here. And last but not least, I want to introduce you to Riza, who's going to be our moderator, and I'll turn it over to you for the rest of the discussion.
Sounds good. Thank you, Julie. So I'm Riza Hussain, and I'm the Global Delivery Manager for LikeMinds Consulting. I work quite a bit with Thani on many projects that we have secured. And so with that, I will get started. Gentlemen, are you ready for the first question that we have?
Sure.
Thank you. How did the pandemic affect your zero trust journey? So I'm going to start off with, of course, from the screen here, I'm going to start top left, like Sriram.
Thank you, Reza. That's a very good question. I used to joke around when people ask the question, hey, who was responsible for digital transformation at your company or industry, right? And I used to say it was the pandemic. And that very well applies to this question, because just like many other companies, the pandemic definitely accelerated our zero trust journey as well. Though we had embarked on this journey earlier, the driver to actually enable secure access for our remote workforce definitely pushed us forward. From that aspect, I would say the pandemic definitely accelerated the zero trust journey at many companies.
Okay, very good, very good. And then next, Thani, would you like to answer that question, please?
Yeah, thank you, Riza. Adding to what Sriram said, definitely more than affected, accelerated would be the right word. The pandemic accelerated the zero trust journey. People, people were looking at logging into multiple applications securely before the pandemic differently. Now now it is all remote access, and how people securely log into networks, and how they do it, that has gone taken a paradigm shift, and that is where zero trust has come in. You don't believe anyone, trust no one, and verify access for everyone. That is the mantra that I would say for zero trust, and that is what is being applied during this pandemic period.
Okay, thank you, Thani. And Aubrey, since there's nobody else, I guess we have the different. Just
I don't
kidding.
know how I feel about that, Riza. I don't know how I feel about that. Since there's nobody else, you go.
I mean, you get to cover so much more, right?
Yes. So I'll say, from the technology product side, and we've got a lot of data, right? Ping did some surveys, kind of right in March of last year, I want to say, and then sort of another one in April of this year. And so the data that we're getting from our respondents indicates that companies are investing in some element of zero trust, right? And maybe there's across the spectrum, right? There could be some, maybe it's they're dipping their toes in to sort of fully taking the plunge. So there are companies along that continuum. But what we're seeing is there's a lot of energy, a lot of momentum behind zero trust. You guys all know it's been around as a concept for years and years, right? I want to say though, and from my perspective, from the Ping perspective, it's we look at it as identity-centric zero trust. I think in this kind of post-pandemic kind of world that we're in, and obviously the pandemic is still sort of going on, right? When you take people from what you imagine to be or think about as sort of the four walls of the security that they had, the people going to offices, right? You could kind of control elements of their security, and then you send them home. Well, whatever you did to make that happen in that rapid fashion, you've got to kind of look back and understand, did we cut some corners? Do people have potentially access that they don't have? Zero trust really, least privilege. So post-pandemic, you're probably doing some analysis of that, trying to make sure that your controls are in place. You haven't introduced any additional risk. Those are all things that, I would see in this sort of post-pandemic. And like I said, right, you need a lens to look through at that in this post-pandemic world. So zero trust becomes that framework that you can lean on. And again, very, very strong framework. Like I said, we tend to lean into it from an identity-centric perspective.
Awesome. Good responses. Thank you. Moving on to the second question. We often hear that identity is the new perimeter in zero trust. What does that mean? And for this, I will start off with Thani and then end it with Ping. So Sriram, I'm not leaving you out, right? That's just wanted to see what from these two perspectives we can cover, right?
Thank you, Riza, once again.
Yeah.
So to explain about identity as the new perimeter, first of all, we got to understand zero trust. With the post-pandemic world, what we have seen is an evolving security perimeter. From a network perimeter plane, now the perimeter, the security perimeter has shifted to identity. Identity is now at its core of zero trust. How does it affect it? If you look at it, previously how we used to trust a particular person or a request inside a network, it is based on the location of that particular user, whether he or she is present inside the corporate network, whether they have logged in or authenticated against a VPN and came into the corporate network. And after that, all the applications are given access to. Now that network security parameter is taken out of the picture. Identity is now at its core, and people have to authenticate outside and authorize, and then only they are given the access. The inherent trust has to be established by the user. So this is where the identity as a parameter comes into play. It puts identity at its core. Then it does not rely on the traditional perimeter-based security with VPN, and it also allows convenient user access to resources. You need not be logging in every time into the VPN and then accessing the resources. Everything is out in the open, but still secure, provides the highest level of security assurance in these cases.
Yeah, so
Very good.
I'll tag on to that. I think I'm next in this segment of
Sure.
the conversation.
Right.
I don't want to jump ahead, but so we see this borderless world, right? That's what we envision, right? The castle and moat concept of, again, like we brought these people into sort of the four walls, and whether it's a false sense of security, whether that's real or perceived, right? Because obviously, clearly, that the castle and moat hasn't been effective for a very long time, right? And we've always had folks that are working external to that castle and moat concept, and we've often secured them through a VPN. But yeah, in this borderless world, in this redefined redefined environment, the sort of the new realities of how people are working, and whether they be workforce identities, partners, consumers, identity has been the security needs to travel with the identity, right? You can't travel to the security of that castle and moat, so identity becomes the security, right? You've got to be able to validate who that user is. So are you who you claim to be, right? Can we have some assurance that again, it is Aubrey that's actually trying to access a resource? So a couple of things, and then I'll pass it along. It's authenticating and authorizing. Every user, device, resource is authenticated and authorized, and identity is the sort of the becomes the one way, the control plane, if you will. Think about it that way, right? Identity becomes that control plane for addressing that. And trust but verify has evolved to never trust, always verify, right? That's the world that we live in. That's this borderless world, and so we've got to rely on identity to have assurance that people are who they claim to be. So I'll punt it rugby style to Sriram and see what, from the Gap perspective, what your experience has been with this identity as the new perimeter.
So that's actually a very good question. When you are talking about the castle and moat, I was thinking, how can we actually verify the seal that somebody carries? It's the right seal to enter the castle, right? So that's what I could actually compare that to. But as you said, right? So the shift from a network centric zero trust to actually an identity-centric zero trust is what we are actually looking at, right? So I think you guys said enough on this, and it's an oft-quoted cliche that identity is the new perimeter. It is. I mean, we used to talk about it as if it's in the distant future, but we are living it, right? So that's what the reality is. So with that, I will pass it on back to Riza.
Awesome. So this third question that I'm going to ask you, I put a lot of thought into it. So,
Really?
so zero. Yeah, I really tried. So, zero trust is a journey that takes time. What is the best way to get started? So, Sriram, this would start with you.
So that's, I mean, since you put a lot of thought into it, I'm also going to give you a very thoughtful answer.
Awesome. Appreciate that.
The success of any tech initiative, I feel, increases with how well it aligns with business outcomes, right? So with the pandemic, I would say that go back to the basics, start with the problem statement. In this case, the pandemic required a remote workforce to be productive, and security teams require that they enable it in a secure manner, right? So that's if you break it down, that's the two sides of the coin, right? So we want a remote workforce that need to be productive wherever they are, and as a security and identity team, we are responsible for ensuring that it actually happens securely. So if you break it down start from there, and then break it down into the solution system components that you need to put in place to make this whole thing work, then you can start at what are the basic building blocks for the solution and start from there. So my suggestion or my recommendation would be to start with the basics, lay down what the problem statement is, lay down what are all the building blocks for a secure or a zero trust solution, if that is the appropriate solution in your case. And right now, it is good. It is definitely the appropriate solution for any company out there based on different happenings, right? So with that, I would like to turn it on to Thani.
Thank you, Sriram. Riza, going by your question and going with our experience in the cybersecurity world, implementing zero trust architecture. Zero trust architecture and zero trust solutions can be a daunting task for enterprises, especially bringing in all the applications, the users, and the workloads. I try to classify it as 3 Ws: workforce, workload, and workplace. These have to be secure. And how are you going to bring these into your zero trust model? That would be the start point. How are you going to secure your data, secure your infrastructure, secure your applications? What the management buy-in? First thing I would see as a system integrator is the enterprise where I'm going to implement zero trust architecture, whether I have the management buy-in. Do they understand the requirements for zero trust? What is going to come and how are we going to implement? Then what are the tools and products that are going to be used to implement this zero trust architecture? You just can't go blindly say, I'm going to rip out my VPN and I'm going to implement a secure architecture. What are the tools that are going to replace, like identity aware proxies? What are they? How is it going to fit your requirements as the enterprise? Getting that data sorted out would be the best way to start your journey in zero trust. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I believe so. Right. Thank you, Thani. So I'll jump on to the next question unless Aubrey
Well,
wants to
I
chime
don't
in.
get to answer that one.
I'm very selective.
Jeez.
Take a crack at it, Aubrey.
Oh,
Go for it.
no, I don't think I want to say anything now.
I've got you lined up for many others.
Yeah. No. Well, I'll be quick because I think Thani hit the nail on the head. Right. It can be daunting. Right. And a couple of things. Right. I'll continue to sort of riff on some ideas there, but zero trust is a framework, so you need to understand that. Right. You're not just going to run down to your favorite whatever store or vendor and buy some zero trust and sprinkle it on and you're done, right? So it's a framework. So breaking it down into the elements, and we kind of look at it, if you guys recall the OSI layer 7 model. So you've got various components, network, application, identity, data. However you choose to bake that zero trust cake, we still see, again, identity centric zero trust. So we see identity as kind of being foundational to it. But I think once you kind of realize it is a framework and kind of break it down into the components, I think the other thing that you need to do is come at it from a risk perspective. And I think Thani also called this out, right? So you've got to take this risk-based approach to figuring out, where you want to start. And the other thing is I don't want teams, again, as daunting as it may seem, you don't need to, you can't ask for progress and perfection, right? That's not a thing. So you've got to take sort of small measured steps. And so having some kind of framework and a roadmap that's risk-based, that again, understands the concept of the layers that you want to tackle, just figuring out where you want to start based on that risk tolerance and risk posture, and taking some initial steps. So, whatever that may be relative to your organization. So that's kind of those are my thoughts on how to kind of get started and dip your toe into the zero trust pool. Oh, and I will say this, I promise to stop here. Zero trust is a team sport, right? It's not, I may be pushing this identity centric approach, but it still is a team sport. And you've got to, and by team, I don't mean just product partners and it's internal stakeholders that you have, right? Bringing them to the table, as well as sort of external stakeholders. And like my colleagues on this call, you may need, product partner, a solutions integrator, et cetera, to help make that zero trust vision and roadmap come to fruition. So I'll stop there.
Okay, got it. Cool. So no pixie dust. That's what you said, right?
No pixie dust, fairy dust, sawdust.
Got it. No dust. Got it. All right, awesome. Going to the next question. So this is for all three. So leaving out technology, what do you have to do from a people, organizational, change management point of view to get zero trust going? So we'll start off with Sriram.
So this is another one of your thought-provoking questions, Riza. But kidding aside,
I know I burned the midnight oil for this.
I can smell it from here.
No, actually, this is a oft ignored piece of any initiative, right? But in this case, I feel that it's obvious and it goes without saying. But working together with the change management team, your tech support or employee enablement team is definitely another key to success for any end user of facing initiative, right? And zero trust is definitely end user facing. And working with these teams to plan the rollout, address any concerns or any issues early on, planning on any workarounds, having those in place are very, very important to ensure success of zero trust rollout, right? And those are all generic stuff when it comes to any end user facing tech rollout. But when it comes to zero trust in specific, there are some people aspects that come to mind. Currently, many business processes and the people behind those processes are habituated to the trusted network, meaning your on-prem network. You come into work, you are in a secure enclave, for lack of a better word, or the VPN. And breaking that paradigm of a network security network-centric security model to something more identity-centric definitely involves a lot of handling perceptions, as well as providing the required assurances that you're actually going to get the same or better level of security with the zero trust model. So, I mean, that's pretty much what I have to say on this topic. But make sure that the people side of any tech rollout is addressed early on, and include the right partners for any of these initiatives to be a success. I think.
Okay, thank you.
Who's next? I think
We're going Z, so it's Thani.
Okay.
Okay, I'll take the. Sriram, as Sriram mentioned, to add to what Sriram had said, I'm just going to go by what he said. It is the education of the users who are going to use the system. That would be the key here. People think of zero trust as like a less secure network sometimes, because people, when we pull people out of the archaic castle wall security model and ask them to log in over the internet and do it, people have to trust the system. How people trust the system is by educating them about zero trust. The users have to be educated about zero trust and how they are proving their access and how securely their access is being recorded and the data is being delivered to them. All these things, if people know, then there will be much more wider acceptance of zero trust and success in the framework. And also, I had already put this forward. Management buy-in. The management buy-in is one key factor in all the zero trust initiatives. It's not just about go implement one zero trust product and bam, I have a zero trust architecture in my company. No, it is also from the top down that security approach has to flow throughout the enterprise, not just for one application also. So that's where I stand.
Very good. Aubrey?
Yeah, I'll add to what my colleagues have said in that, I mentioned I've been in cyber and identity for, roughly 20 years. And early on, we would roll out, and it doesn't have to necessarily be zero trust, right? And again, I'll speak to sort of identity because I've got a lot of experience there. We would deploy some of these tools, right? And whatever it was, and then we'd be surprised that we didn't have widespread adoption. And the ingredient that we were missing was the organizational change management. It's like we expected a different result, right? We hadn't prepared or hadn't accounted for that. So like anything else, right? Hopefully we learn and we evolve. And, again, the zero trust, right? It's been around for some time. Like I said, a lot more energy and momentum. And just because it's this new thing doesn't mean we still don't need to apply some of the same best practices that we've learned over the course of time. So whatever we're rolling out from a zero trust perspective, we need to ensure that we accompany that with organizational change management. We've got to, on the front end, figure out if we're impacting users, or we're going to be inconveniencing them, because the minute you inconvenience a user from a security perspective, they're likely to find ways to work around and weaken the security, right? So if you can make the experience frictionless, you're more than likely to have greater adoption. So understanding the impact to a user, and then providing, whether it's FAQs, resources for them to call, sort of almost internal public relations for whatever it is you're doing. And I forget who mentioned the executive sponsorship. That kind of top-down leadership, I think, is critical. And then, like I said, I think ultimately, being able to show results, and this may be an upcoming question around sort of metrics and indicators of change. But when we have that change management, we want to be able to sort of message that back to the leadership or whoever it is that, hey, we've made this change and here's the outcome. Here's how we're measuring the success of that. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. Got to pair whatever you're doing with organizational change management. Otherwise, you're likely to blame the product or technology. And I can't tell you how many times I've walked in the door of a company and they're ready to rip out a technology, only we ask some questions and find out that the users aren't adopting it because maybe they weren't involved or they weren't really shown how to use it. So there's frustration on both sides. So I hate to sound like a broken record, but can't say enough about bringing that piece to whatever it is you're doing from a zero trust perspective.
That's good.
Awesome. Great answers. All right. So the next question, this would be for Thani and Aubrey. Why do some zero trust efforts fail? I think you may have already answered it in some way there, but maybe something different.
Yeah, who do you want to go first? Okay, Thani. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. You already started.
Yeah, Aubrey, try to cover as much as you can, so Thani's left with very little.
Oh, okay. All right. Your wish is my command. So I'll say, and like I said, I think in that last segment we kind of covered some of that. I think I'll go right back to some of that organizational change management. That's probably likely one of the main reasons why these zero trust ships sink before they even leave the dock. Right? That's kind of that thing. Like you don't have that. I think the other mistake people have made is thinking again that they're going to go buy some zero trust and all will be solved, right? And I think looking at it as a product and not a framework. I think if anybody approaches you with that, like, hey, I'm going to sell you some zero trust, I would be skeptical, right? I'd be immediately skeptical and challenge whatever they're saying, because, like I said, to my knowledge and conversations that I've had, right, sort of people who are embracing it look at it as a framework and a methodology, right? And you may have existing frameworks and methodologies, and zero trust sort of is woven into that cybersecurity program. So I think those are sort of two kind of top reasons. I'll add another one, right? In the identity space, there's so many bright, shiny objects that the barriers of entry for some identity solutions are really, really low. And a lot of us, could fall susceptible to that, shiny object syndrome kind of thing. And, somebody's stamped this thing and is marketing and advertising it as zero trust. And we're like, hey, we need some zero trust, right? My peers and colleagues and folks are talking about it. And this company's got zero trust. Let me purchase that. And then we find out that we aren't really accomplishing what we set out to if we're, again, looking at zero trust from an identity-centric perspective. So I think that and paired with, hopefully I'm taking enough time and not leaving enough time for Thani, so I'll keep rolling. I'll go back to one other thing that I talked about, this whole sort of team sport, right? Like I said, I'm all about identity-centric zero trust, but you've got to have partnerships, right? To get zero trust to scale, right? You've got to have partnerships. Otherwise, I think it will stall. And those partnerships are internal. They are external. Like I said, certainly technology partnerships. Like, again, this team sport, let's say identity is the quarterback. You've got to bring in some endpoint, is your tailback or running back. You've got to have some, sorry guys, I know we talked about cricket the last time, but I don't know cricket positions, so I don't know football analogy. You've got to have a wide receiver who's your network person,
Sure.
right? So again, this team sport mentality, you've got to have these stakeholder relationships and partnerships. Otherwise, like I said, I think this is why zero trust will be suboptimal.
Thank you.
Thani, did he leave anything else for you? I feel like he just drank everything. And...
Yeah, Aubrey rolled over me so beautifully. Like, I just got to be really short here. Three things.
Sure.
Three things I want to put forth. I might be sounding like a broken record, but three things. Wrong understanding of zero trust. That's one of the major reasons zero trust efforts fail in the organizations. Um, Organizations have to come with the correct understanding of zero trust. What is zero trust, and how is it going to benefit their enterprise? It's not just a buzzword to be implemented. Hey, as Aubrey said, um, the shining object. Let's go and pull that out and implement it in our organization. No, that should not be the approach, and that is why zero trust efforts fail. And one more, the second point is again management buy-in. A lot of zero trust efforts start very with a lot of energy, but it drains down without much management buy-in. It doesn't last the entire stretch. That is one more point I want to bring in. And the last one is investing in the right products and tools for zero trust. That is one major thing. Um, each and every vendor says, hey, I can do zero trust. I can do zero trust. Yes, people can do zero trust, but at what capacity zero trust can be implemented? Aubrey mentioned about identity centric zero trust approach. Think and do identity centric zero trust approach. So, in that way, what are the right tools to implement your zero trust approach? If it is a network centric zero trust approach, what are you going to implement? What are you going to implement when you're taking an identity centric approach? So these are the answers that needs to be correctly identified so that the zero trust approach does not fail in your organization.
Okay, thank you, Thani. And with time being a factor here, this probably may be our last questions, depending on how Aubrey answers, right? So
Hey, you asked me to stretch it out, man. I just complied with your request, right? You asked me to stretch it out. If you want me to keep it short and sweet, I'll do that. Fine.
Right. So the last question, maybe not, right? But how do you measure zero trust success? I'm going to start off with Sriram.
There are several standardized tool sets and checklists available from all the usual suspects that you would look for such frameworks and tools, right? So, you can definitely pick one that your organization is using for other security programs and such, right? But I want to keep it at a high level, right? So I want to go to the root of the problem. So the root of the problem is, I would say, measure of success for zero trust is how you can actually enable your workforce to be productive by providing access to all the resources that they are authorized to access, wherever they are, however they are accessing it from, right? So it sounds vague, but if you actually break it down, that's the problem we are trying to solve.
All right, cool. Thani, you want to go next?
Sure. How would you measure zero trust success? I already pointed out 3 W's: workforce, workplace, and workload. If you're able to secure the trust factor around these 3 W's, you can easily measure the success of your zero trust approach. Establishing trust, then enforcing that trust-based access to your applications, then continuous trust verification of those applications. And then finally, in case of an imminent threat that is occurring, you have to have a mechanism where you can enable rapid and automated threat containment. You have to, although you have in zero trust model, you never trust anyone and verify the trust. After you are verified and you are allowed access also, you have to continuously continuously verify that trust. And then if that trust is broken, you should be able to isolate that threat and contain it. So that would be a clear indicator of a zero trust success.
Yeah, I'll jump on. I'll jump on that
Sure.
zero trust bandwagon there. I think a couple of things, right? I think metrics are important, right? You can't measure, you can't track something or understand if it's successful if you can't measure it, right? So whether in and again, I mentioned sort of having stakeholders at the table. So I think a couple of things, certainly understanding, the key risk indicators of the organization. So that might mean working with your GRC team. If you have other key performance indicators, right, tracking those, and you may establish those. I'll tell you a couple of notions that we have at Ping, right? And again, these are notions, not absolutes, right? So I'll preface what I'm about to say with that. But SSO everything and MFA everywhere. Again, notions, right? So if you start there and then based on risk at certain points, right, whether it's quarterly or weekly, you're understanding where you don't have MFA and where you don't have SSO. For some reason, maybe there's an app that you can't have SSO for whatever the reason or circumstances, but you can track that, and that's a data point, right? And then you can work with the risk team in your organization, likely the GRC folks, to understand whether you need to figure that out. So I think it's about defining those metrics, defining those standards. And like I said, very, very simply, if you can't measure something, you can't really understand whether you're being successful or not. And again, this is relative to each organization, right? So this isn't like a sort of a one size fits all, right? You figure out what size fits you, again, relative to your risk profile and your risk tolerance. But I think the main point is, again, being able to measure it. You've got to have some metrics and things that you are tracking. And I love the idea, the simple concept of SSO, everything, and MFA everywhere. I think start there and track it from there. I was short.
Very good. Yeah, I know. Just a quick reminder. If you have questions for our panel, please submit those questions. So I'm going to jump to another very interesting question here. How does zero trust hurt or help your users?
Oh, that's right up Sriram. Yeah, that's all you.
Right.
That's all you.
So in my personal opinion, a zero trust definitely helps and does not hurt users, right? That's my personal opinion. But I wanted to keep this webinar at a very high level, at least from my side. I didn't want to get into some specifics, but this question definitely, I think I'll go a little one layer deeper, right? So, definitely, as I said, zero trust helps and not hurt users. For example, there may be scenarios where users might need to probably, let's say, they need to approve an additional MFA challenge, right? So that might be a scenario. But it's not always a compromise of convenience, right? In many cases, if this was implemented right, let's say a parent with a risk-based authentication engine, so you can actually lower the scenarios when somebody has to go through an additional MFA challenge or need to re-authenticate themselves or whatnot. So if you actually look at it, if you have the right components in place, and if the zero trust solution is implemented right, as some of the other presenters mentioned, it's not one product or one thing, right? It is a way of thinking. It is actually a holistic solution that you actually implement that has several technical components. If those are all paired right, definitely you can not only can you achieve better security, but also in many scenarios you can also provide better usability and convenience to your users, right? So considering that, I would say that I would want to go back to my original statement, is that zero trust definitely helps users and does not hurt them.
Very good. So anybody else want to take a crack at that?
Yeah, let me go. Zero
Awesome.
trust, as Sriram mentioned, it definitely is a boon, I would say, from a personal standpoint. When you take both security and usability, we can combine both these in zero trust and provide a complete package where a user can securely access his data slash applications, not from anywhere, from anywhere, not just being inside the corporate network and going into that castle wall perimeter. Since it's all identity centric, you are always verified and then allowed into your application, and that too, um, as Aubrey pointed out, SSO and MFA everywhere. You would be verified in all levels and then only provided access. It is definitely a boom, I would say, when implemented correctly.
Very good. Thank you. All right. One last question I think we may be able to take here. Is VPN necessary for zero trust? I'm just going to go like tic-tac-toe and try to figure. Aubrey, you're the winner. Ding, ding, ding.
Thank you, Riza. I mean, I think a VPN can be part of your, certainly part of your zero trust architecture, right? I think, we've certainly seen, and again, post-pandemic and things, as a result of the pandemic, you may have needed to likely scale your VPN capability up. Hopefully you had MFA sitting in front of it. I was in a webinar yesterday, and my co-panelist and I were like, listen, if you don't have MFA in front of your VPN, it's okay if you need to hang up on this webinar and go get some MFA. We will forgive you. Like, that's okay. So I think if architected properly and paired with strong authentication, yeah, it's absolutely okay to have a VPN as part of your architecture. We've certainly seen a move to sort of more SSO portals for workforce access, for example, and or partner access. So I wouldn't say it's necessary. If you obviously, most companies probably still have, VPN for various types of access, and you likely have that, standing with some kind of SSO portal as well. I think the main point is certainly understanding, capacity. I think Thani brought that up, right? Like, what does the capacity look like? What does the architecture look like? And I think most importantly, have you stood up MFA in front of that VPN or VPNs, as the case may be? So that's how I would reply to that. Is VPN necessary for zero trust question?
Okay, cool. Before we end it, one piece of advice from each one of y'all on zero trust. Something to end it with, something that will, make the viewers remember what was said.
Sure, I can summarize some of the things I mentioned.
Right.
So, start somewhere. Start with the basics. So definitely go back to the problem statement. What are you actually trying to achieve? Align it with the business outcome. involve the right people and get started, right? So that's pretty much it. Action
Awesome.
is key.
Awesome. Thank you. Thani?
I would also echo the same words of Sriram. Start from the basics. Start from the basics. Get the management buy-in. Understand what you are getting into. Implement the right products, and provide a convenient way for your users to access their applications. That's about zero trust.
Spotlights on you, Aubrey.
Yeah, Riza, I thought it for a second. You were asking for my recipe for butter poached lobster. So I'm glad you clarified that you wanted my zero trust takeaways.
They would have gone jail.
It would be on a tangent, right?
Right. Yeah. No. So a couple of quick things, and I love what my co-panelists have said. Those are all sort of thoughtful ways to approach it, right? I think I mentioned, you don't, that whole idea of don't let perfection get in the way of good, and those kind of things. Start somewhere, pick something, take a risk-based approach. Don't approach it as a product based solution set. Understand what you have. Certainly look at the tools that you have in your environment. I would highly encourage you to take a an identity-centric approach to zero trust. I think, without identity, zero trust is suboptimal. I think I've already said that, and I love those concepts of SSO everything and MFA everywhere. Again, I think those are some anchor points that you can use in conjunction. And like I said, right, zero trust is a team sport, right? So from the technology perspective, and I meant, again, looking at your tool set, and then the stakeholders, partnerships like the one we have here on this panel, as well as your internal stakeholders. And then, like I said, the icing on that is organizational change management. That was more than one or two takeaways, but again, hopefully, in that you've grabbed a couple things that folks can use to help them get started.
Yeah, all I took out of that, Aubrey, is the lobster recipe. Please email that to me, please.
We're having lobster for dinner.
Right. So yeah, thank you for your time. Thank you, Sriram. Thank you, Aubrey. Thank you, Thani. This was awesome. Great set of questions. Like I told you, I had to use a lot of whale oil, but it worked, right? So thank you for your time, and we'll see you all again.
Yeah.
Have a good day and stay safe.
Have a great weekend.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Bye.